She was the perfect woman. I have no idea how I managed to catch her attention. Our relationship, our marriage, it was all perfect. Except for one thing that neither of us could have foreseen. We met in college. She was working towards her English degree while I was studying business. My major required me to take an English course, as did hers, and we found ourselves in the same class. When she asked if the desk next to mine was taken, I was almost too stunned to answer. Kathy was beautiful in that artless way that some women have, and she smiled as I fumbled over my answer. That would have been the end for most people. I had fumbled my one chance. But Kathy wasn't like other women. She told me later that she found it enduring, and Kathy suspected that she was already a bit taken with me when she already asked to sit down. When I saw you from across the room, I just knew I wanted to get to know you better. We talked a little bit before class, comparing schedules and going over the usual getting to know you chit-chat. When the teacher arrived and class began, I found myself snatching little glances at her as she bent over her notebook. She caught me looking once, and to my surprise, I saw her smile at me. I was smitten after that smile, and when Kathy invited me to lunch after class, I didn't even have to think about it. We were dating a week later, and as we got closer, I should have noticed the warning signs of the problems to come. I suppose I understand how it escaped my notice, though. Few people would have considered utter peace and pure relaxation a problem. When we walked hand in hand, I would get this feeling of utter peace throughout my body. When we kissed, I felt nothing in the world could hurt me. She made me feel safe, made my problems melt away, and I knew that I wanted more than a few hours that we would enjoy each week. Her college schedule made it difficult to go out more than twice a week, and my own class load kept me busy too. A part of the reason that we had such little time together, though, was Kathy's commute to and from school. Kathy lived an hour and a half from campus and couldn't begin to afford an apartment on her meager student income. The job that I worked, plus the leftover grant money that I had at the end of the semester, paid the rent on my studio apartment, but not much else. Another person paying rent was nice, but I couldn't say that it was the only reason that I invited her to live with me. I also wanted her close to me. She made me feel good and made me feel safe. Being in her presence made the dark world in which I lived a little bit more tolerable, and I wanted for more than just a few hours a week. I offered to let her move in, and after a week of mulling it over, she agreed. That weekend, we combined our meager possessions and I slept like a baby with her in my arms. As we began to spend our evenings together, the problems became apparent. Problems is a terrible word for it because, in the beginning, it was more like a godsend. When we sat on the couch, our hands linked, I would find myself getting drowsy. When we would cuddle on the couch, our bodies pressed together, I would lose minutes at a time as my eyes grew heavier and heavier. The feeling of peace that I found in her presence put me at ease, and that ease led to some of the best sleep in my life. I would sleep more deeply than I had ever had before and wake up after 8 hours refreshed and ready to start my day. Kathy seemed pleased with the attention. She'd only been with one other person before we started dating, but I could tell that she wondered why I hadn't slept with her yet. Some women's feelings would have been hurt by this, but Kathy had been raised in a very religious household and must have assumed that I was simply waiting till marriage. The truth was that I would have loved to have slept with her, but sleeping was the problem. Whenever we got close, my arms around her and our bodies pressed together, and I would find myself blinking and suddenly losing periods of time. Sometimes she would lead me to bed. Sometimes she would just sleep with me on the couch. Either way, I would always wake up next to Kathy with a deep feeling of fulfillment. I had assumed that she was feeling the same way, and I often thought that maybe this was a feeling that we each gave each other, and it made me feel good to bring her to the same sort of peace that she brought me. This went on for about 6 months, and I thought that things were going well. We went out to dinner, had friends over, went out on dates, and seemed to be living together with few problems. I had been tentatively looking at rings, preparing to pop the question and make it official. Besides the matter of intercourse, I thought that we were happy. Then one evening, I came home from class to find her crying on the couch. I hadn't seen her that day. She'd been absent from the one class that we had together, and when I'd called her, she had said that she was feeling sick. It was nothing serious. She maybe had a cold or something. I told her to feel better, hanging up as I could leave for my next class, but I saw her look up from her cupped hands. I knew something was definitely wrong.
I had never seen her cry before, and it was so alarming that I could do little else to comfort her except for go to her and wrap my arm around her.
She wouldn't tell me what was wrong, but I now wish that I had pressed her. I wrapped her in my reassuring arm and tried my best to comfort her in her time of need. My arms quickly turned into drawing her close and wiping her tears. This soon led to kissing, which led to touching, and then to finally the bedroom. I won't bore you with the details, but I think that you know how that ended up. I woke up the next day, her hands slightly stroking my hair and fresh tears running down her cheeks. It was our first time, and I couldn't even begin to remember how it had gone. I had asked her to marry me a month later, and she seemed overjoyed. We had been living together for about half a year now, and our love for one another was pretty clear. She wore my engagement ring with pride, showing it off to all of her friends, and we began to plan our wedding. I was too blind to see that she was making appointments with a campus therapist more often than she used to. I was too comfortable to notice the tears that seemed to come to her while we laid in bed together. I was too wrapped up in my own feelings to notice the prescriptions that appeared in the medicine cabinet. I was just so comfortable that I never wanted it to end. It's easy to get tunnel vision when you spend all of your time in a tunnel of love. After the first time, however, I did make efforts to be better in the bedroom. Kathy was patient with me, seeing that I was trying, but I often found myself trying one moment and waking up the next. She was always quick to reassure me that it was nothing to be ashamed about, but I knew that it hurt her deeply to have a partner incapable of being intimate with her. So I set out to find the reason for my sleeping fits. I began to make doctor's appointments on my own. I said that the appointments were for her benefit, but I was honestly more concerned that I might have a real problem brewing. The last thing I wanted to do was discover at 22 years old that I was narcoleptic or had a problem with my brain or something. I explained what was happening to my doctor, and he was helpful, if not a little dismissive. A kid your age shouldn't be having any sort of problem in that type of department. Well, we'll get you checked out. He assured me with a smile and a pat on my shoulder. I was tested for every sleep disorder imaginable. I was given prescriptions of my own, but none of them seemed to work. I took supplements, signed up for new drugs that had just hit the market, and joined medical test groups. Despite it all, though, no one seemed to have any answers for what was going on. I was just so comfortable with my fiancée that I couldn't help but fall asleep in her arms. It would have been sweet if it wasn't worrying me to no end. We had decided on March for our wedding, the first anniversary of our meeting, and I was determined to make it special for her. I was as helpful and dutiful as a boyfriend or fiancé could be. I went with her through every stage of the planning. I picked out cake toppers, helped with seating charts, picked out the menu, visit, and put a deposit down on the venue,
and comforted my soon-to-be wife every step of the way.
The saving grace, of course, was that I could put my performance issues down to pre-wedding jitters, and the day crept closer and closer. The wedding was easy and the happiest day of my life. I stood at the altar, sweating into my rented tux, waiting for the moment that she would arrive. The crowd huddled around me in a murmuring throng of excited tension, and I felt like 1,000 years had passed before the music began from the organist. And when I saw her in her dress, gliding down the aisle like a dream, I fell in love with her all over again. She was just so beautiful. Her tears now ones of joy, and I never regretted asking her to join her life to mine. We exchanged rings, spoke vows of eternal love, and then walked from the church as husband and wife. As we stood for pictures, the venue having set up on the lawn to host our reception, I made ready to fulfill my end of the night. I drank champagne for the toasts and black coffee by the cup. I took caffeine supplements before I climbed into the car and left for our honeymoon suite. And as she went to the bathroom to take off her dress, I walked around and I tried my best to keep my heart racing. I told myself over and over again that tonight would be different, that tonight would pay for all of the rest. I wanted nothing but to make her feel special and to make night one to remember. When she came out of the bathroom, the two of us standing before each other as husband and wife, I felt like I was possessed with all of the energy and serenity that I would ever need. And when we woke up the next morning, entwined as we always were, there were no more tears on her cheeks, only a look of fulfillment I knew all too well. We settled into our married life easily, and it was as though nothing had changed. Despite my best efforts, however, I couldn't recapture the magic of that night. Whenever I was in her arms, whenever we were close, I couldn't help but fall into a feeling of utter serenity and slip into sleep. It was as if those feelings had multiplied after the wedding, and she made me feel like I might die of happiness. I couldn't hold her hand as we drove anymore. Least I find myself listing off the road. If I cuddled onto the couch with her to watch a movie, I would inevitably miss over half of it. I love nothing more than to bask in that feeling of serenity that seemed to waft over her, but I felt guilty. She seemed to return to her silent, tearful nature. I couldn't help myself. I was powerless to resist the pull of her, and I was powerless to do anything when I was in her arms. And I began to notice as her mental health got worse, though. Kathy was moody and manic by turns, and sometimes she wanted nothing to do with me, only to cry and demand my attention as I tried to give her space. I often missed classes because I was afraid to leave her by herself, and I finally insisted that we go see a doctor. The doctor said that this was normal. Her medication just needed to be adjusted. And despite their best efforts, the new pills and the adjustment of the old pills seemed to do no good. Our lovemaking was non-existent, and despite my best efforts, I tried to comfort her, tried other means of intimacy, attended couples therapy with her, and tried my best to keep her from imploding. And in the end, though, it did no good. I remember the night that it happened as vividly as I remember our wedding night. I was lying in bed, Kathy still in the bathroom, and she was worried about an appointment that we had the next day. They planned to try her on a new battery of pills, and Kathy seemed willing to give it a try. She had wandered around the house like a fretful ghost all day, and I was keeping an eye on her up until this very moment. I felt like we were just about to go to bed when we'd fallen asleep into a comfortable embrace in each other's arms. Everything would be fine. She climbed into bed, and something about her face just didn't seem right. And then she opened her arms, and I was like a meteorite hurtling into planet's gravity. "I love you," she said, kissing my forehead as her heart raced against my chest. "I'll always love you."
I fell asleep wrapped in the arms of my love.
Sure that as long as I remained here, everything would be okay. And I woke up, however, to discover that I was sleeping next to a corpse. I called the paramedics, but there was nothing that they could do. She had been dead for hours as I slept. Kathy had taken an overdose of sleeping pills before tucking in for the night before. It was almost an ironic end, and the note that she had left on the nightstand told me everything that I needed to know. All these years, I believed that I had been giving her the same feeling that she had been giving me. And it turned out that I was nothing but a thief in the night. Kathy said that her mental decline had started almost the day that we met. The balance and the fulfillment that I had been experiencing were a mirror to the anxiety that she was feeling. She had taken my inability to stay awake as something that she was doing. She was boring me. I was disinterested, and she was failing as a woman as a result. The longer it lasted, the more that she felt like she was the cause. She wanted to please me, to be a good wife, but the longer that it went on, the more inadequate that she felt. She loved me. She never wavered in her love for me, but being with someone who was physically uninterested in her was killing her, physically and emotionally. She had finally decided that if sleeping next to her was what I wanted, then she would give me what I wanted. We would both sleep soundly for a change. I am writing this as I sit in the viewing room of the funeral parlor. They gave me an hour before her cremation, a final viewing for her grieving husband. I can tell by the way that they kept looking at me, that way that I must look must be terrible. I have been awake for the last 5 days, and the bags under my eyes look like suitcases. I have become accustomed to her presence, to the way that she makes me feel, and now my sleep is all but non-existent. I'm like a junkie with no smack, and my fix lies in that box across the way, looking as lovely as she did the way that we met. I think that when I get done with this, I may climb into the simple pine box with her and see if I can find some sleep. I can almost feel whatever she possessed from my seat here. And I want to see if she still possesses it, even in death. Who knows? Maybe I'll pull the lid closed behind me, and they will simply slide me into the chute as well. It seems fitting somehow that the two of us should sleep forever. Two souls at rest for all of time. All of us texted it. My brother, June, his wife May, our cousins Clara and Phil and their partners, and me. The only single among the couples at our backyard barbecue. I was turning the dogs on the grill when June brought it up, claiming to have overheard some of the tech bros at work discussing it. You just text it. What's my death date? And it'll tell you when you're gonna die. No way, gasped Cousin Clara. You're shitting me. Creepy. May rubbed her arms and shivered. Now that's just bullshit, I called. June's been a champion bullshitter since we were little. When he met May, whose names I like to think is short for mayhem, the two hit it off like firecrackers, each one-upping each other with their shenanigans. Pranks that ran from the harmless, like May making caramel onions instead of apples, to the elaborate, like the week that I found roaches all over my apartment, even falling on me from the shower head. June sniffed out a receipt for plastic roaches on Mai's credit card and convinced me to get her back with a live centipede, which I put in a cup and handed it to her. Not until she screamed and flung the centipede back at me did June's maniacal cackling finally clue me in that he'd played us both. So, this death date business. Yeah, classic June bullshit. He was showing off his phone screen. His death date was tomorrow. In rapid succession, the others texted the number, so I went ahead and joined, even though it was a stupid prank, and not even one of the better ones. We compared responses. Me, 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Clara, 11:16 a.m., June 5th, 2040. Howie, 1:19 p.m., March 11th, 2027. Phil, 6:44 a.m., October 3rd, 2063. Ezra, 7:53 p.m., November 7th, 2029. Mai, 9:45 p.m., June 11th,
2023. In June, 10:53 a.m., May 12th, 2023. Tomorrow was June's. Coincidentally, on his birthday. Mai and Clara were freaking out. They kept asking, was he scared? Was he worried? And Phil jokingly suggested that he should lock himself indoors and make sure that he not go anywhere. That sort of thing. Of course, June made a big production of it, texting updates all through the morning of his birthday. And then after 9:53 a.m., nothing. June's texts just stopped. It was, of course, all completely staged. Just as cousin Clara dragged in our parents, who then called me and insisted I go check on my brother, and honey, we know it's just June being June, but go make sure. He finally sent a video thanking everyone for the birthday wishes and exclaiming about how he'd see us all soon to celebrate his birth, not his death. And also how he'd gotten messages from mom and dad and so many people, and how funny it spread so far. Even his boss had called. Sometimes, I wanted to strangle my little brother. So anyway, we all agreed later at his birthday party that no one was fooled and asked who we actually texted. Turned out we'd been texting someone named Aisha, a girl that he'd met and was planning to set me up with. Nice of him, though these kind of dates rarely worked in my favor. So I added the number to my contacts and then messaged her. Hey, death date girl. Aisha, right? It seems my brother dragged you into one of his evil schemes. Aisha, 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. LOL, good one, but he already came clean. Aisha, 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. I frowned as I noticed something that I hadn't seen the first time around. I showed the group my phone. Guys, I don't think that this is Aisha. General scoffs all around because, of course, they thought that I was kidding. But then I opened the contacts so that way they could see the number. Turns out I'd been one digit off this whole time. Everyone else had been messaging Aisha and was getting made-up death dates from her. But I had messaged someone else. When they realized this, the group sobered up. Well. Who did you text then? John snatched my phone, eyes bright with curiosity. I have no idea. Ask them who you are, suggested cousin Clara. And so I did. And again, the same response. 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Oh, let me try. Mai tapped the mysterious number into her phone and whizzed off a text. And almost immediately, a bell chimed with a response. 12:33 a.m., May 15th, 2023. Oh my god, guys! Chills! Squealed Clara. That is creepy. Mai eyed June. That's how you do a death date prank. Did you set this up? June asked her. No, I swear. All right, that's enough death dates, declared our dad. He and Mom could only suffer so much of our antics. The conversation was dropped, and as I was heading back home later, June approached me. He seemed annoyed and convinced either I or someone else was copying his idea, which he claimed wasn't funny since he'd already done it. Apparently, he really wanted to know who was behind it, and I told him that I had no clue, but just as he asked, set a cold pin of anxiety in my brain. After all, if it wasn't someone in our family group, whose number was that? Imagining some stranger texting back sent icy fingers tracing the flesh of my neck. June grumbled that it was probably Mai, then smiled and encouraged me to give Aisha a ring. Try to be cool, he said, and less of a stick in the mud. I think the word that you're looking for is reasonable, I suggested. Serious, mature. All synonyms for boring. I flipped him the bird and then forgot about the whole death date thing. For a few days, at least. I didn't even remember it until today when I went to message Aisha and got the same response. Aisha, 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Shit. Forgotten to delete the death date number from my contacts after putting her name in. I did so now, and I was about to message the real Aisha when curiosity brought me back to the death date number again, now just coming up as unknown on my phone. So I messaged. Who is this? Unknown. 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. My? Unknown. 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Fuck it. I borrowed a coworker's phone, asking if I could send a quick text since mine was dead. A white lie, sometimes I could be as sneaky as June. And I sent the same number, the original question again. When is my death date? Unknown. 9:49 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Ugh. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. How the hell had this number responded with the same exact date and time to a completely different phone? The sudden icy grips of fear were impossible to ignore. I called June, but it went to voicemail, and moments later my phone buzzed. June. Work? Question mark. I sent a rapid series of texts explaining, and then June responded. 1 sec. I got 9:42 p.m., May 15th, 2023. Probably my. LOL. A few hours later, June met me at my townhouse. He told me flatly that he couldn't figure out who owned the number, and it struck me that, given the work at the tech company, he'd probably tried all sorts of tricks to track it down. Annoying as he could be, he's incredibly smart. The fact that he couldn't figure out where it came from made the knot in my gut tighten. A horrible dread settled over me. I'm sure it's just my. She's been out all day and hasn't been responding to any of my texts, but I bet she set this whole thing up to freak us out. June spoke casually, rolling his eyes. I didn't like to admit when something got under my skin, ever. But having grown up with him, I could spot the tension around his eyes, the way that his smile didn't reach them. And I called Mai's phone. Straight to voicemail. She's at a show with Clara and her mom, June said. Been going on about it all week. No coincidence that the show ends just a half hour before our death date. Give her enough time to rush over here to scare us. It's part of the whole thing. Trust me. She'll be here soon. And then he grinned, pointing at my laptop. You're typing this all up? I started typing earlier this afternoon, documenting in case, well, just in case. That's great. Oh, I know some people who you can send it to, make it viral. I have zero interest, I said, and he rolled his eyes. It's like you don't even want a girlfriend. 9:39. Still no answer from Mai. And suddenly my phone vibrated. June always kept it on silent, but his eyes darted to it when the screen lit up. And he blinked, showing it to me. We both had the same text. Unknown. Downstairs from the door of the townhome came knocking, and June jumped. Oh! Mai is good! I take it back. She's given us a good scare. I was too freaked out to say anything. I just really hoped that it was Mai. And June shouted, Mai! Is that you? There was tension in his frame as he called again. Then he put his phone to his ear and snickered. And I heard it too. A tinkling sound of bells from somewhere just outside the front door. Mai's ringtone. She was outside. June pulled the phone from his ear and called out, Gotcha, Mai! We know it's you. He smirked at me. Be back in a sec, he said and hurried down. And my phone buzzed again. And from downstairs, the click of the front door latch. I looked at the time on my phone. 9:41. June's time was almost up. I really did plan it all perfectly so he could arrive right when he was supposed to meet his end. And I heard June calling out the front door for Mai, probably hiding somewhere to pounce on him. And a moment later, I heard the scruff of him putting his shoes on and stepping outside. And then my phone buzzed. June. Be back in a sec. I was about to close the browser. This browser, with the window open to the account that I've been documenting all of this, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't June or the unknown number. It was Cousin Clara. Clara. Hey, have you heard from Mai? Me. Yeah, why? Clara. Oh, thank goodness. She was supposed to meet me and Mom. The big show. We got really worried. All of our calls went to voicemail. Can you ask her why she didn't come? The show. June had mentioned the show too. And now I remembered Mai talking about that show at the barbecue, how she'd spent weeks trying to get those tickets. She had missed it. Sudden sickness twisted in my stomach, the dread dialing up from a tingle to a horrid lurch like the floor had just been ripped out from under me, and I hollered, June! Did you find her? My phone buzzed. June. The rapping on the door was so loud I jumped. It wasn't down the steps at the front of the building, but right outside my living room door. I hadn't heard any footsteps come up the stairs. Hello? I said. Hey, let us in, called June. Relief flooded me at the sound of his voice. I got it from my laptop and I reached for the knob. I don't know why I hesitated, and suddenly the feeling of dread was like a noose being pulled around my neck, cutting off the air. Warning. Some primitive instinct. Why hadn't there been any footsteps? And I called June's phone. It rang for a while, and then went to voicemail. Hey, why aren't you answering your phone? I asked. Then June's voice, near enough that it was clear there was only a wooden door between us. Because I'm right outside the door? How do I know it's you? His refusal to answer his phone stuck in my mind like a chicken bone caught in my throat. The explosion of my phone's ringtone made me jump. I picked up the call and June's voice said in my ear. Happy now? Yes, I said, relieved. Knock, knock, he said, and I could almost hear him smile. Let us in. No. Bro. June sounded annoyed. And my phone buzzed. June. I quickly tapped back. Me. After 9:50 p.m. June. He knocked on the door. Let us in, he added. You're being ridiculous, bro. He banged on the door. Just open the door. It's us. Where's Mai? I shot back. There was a long pause. Still no rustling or footsteps or any other human sounds. And then Mai's sing-song voice. Open the door. In 5 minutes, I said. It was 9:45. You seriously just want to make us stand in the hallway for 5 minutes? Come on, snapped June. Let us in, chimed Mai. Let us in, thundered June. But the more that they demanded I open the door, the more my pulse raced and my hands slicked with sweat. Why did it matter so much? What was 5 minutes? Sometimes with siblings you get in these power struggles. And that was what this felt like. Like maybe it was just June trying to make me do things his way, annoyed with me trying to control him. Only, I wasn't trying to control him or Mai. I was genuinely afraid. I refused to open the door. The shouting and the pleading continued, and my phone suddenly began vibrating so much that I had to snatch it up to prevent it from falling off the desk. The texts were coming nonstop as the door kept rattling. At 9:49 p.m., the sound suddenly ceased. I waited several minutes, frozen in terror, finally went to the door, hands trembling, wrapping my fingers around the knob, and opened it. There was nobody in the hallway, only a few dirty tracks. Strange. June always removed his shoes before coming up. The front door was wide open, a cool breeze blowing in, and I wandered down and I peeked outside and then closed it. Maybe they were in it together. Maybe they were pulling some sort of elaborate prank like with the cockroaches. I went back upstairs and I called June's phone again, hoping that he'd pick up. But there was no answer. I called and nothing. I was just about to go to bed and look for him again when I noticed something face down on the sofa. June's phone. He must have left it in the living room when he went down to get Mai. I picked it up and I saw missed calls, as well as a bunch of texts from Clara asking about Mai and the show. He knew Mai was missing before he arrived. That explained why he was so tense. But he didn't want to admit it, thinking that she was just one-upping him on his prank. That also explains why he'd been so relieved, in such of a hurry to go meet her when he had heard her ringtone. I also checked his text history. None of his knock-knock messages after he left came from his phone. Now, near 10:30 according to the analog clock on my bookshelf, and I'm freaking out, because my phone and laptop are both frozen at 9:49 p.m. and have been for the past half hour. I tried calling Mom, tried calling Dad or Cousin Clara or anybody, but the line is busy. No matter who I ring, it's busy. And my laptop, like all of the frozen technology, isn't working. Luckily, I can still type it into this window that's already open, so that's what I've been doing. Documenting, praying that I will be able to post this and get help. My phone just buzzed. June. And now the phone slips out of my fingers, and icy claws rake down my spine. Because the knocking came from inside the room, and suddenly I remember how I peeked out of the door earlier before I realized the clocks were frozen, and words are now flashing across my laptop on their own as fast as I can think them. And let me finish typing for you, as June's voice chuckles like he always did when he landed a really good prank back when he was alive, and he whispers right in my ear. Hey. Thanks for letting me in.